Thank you for that introduction. That was fantastic. I actually thought coming over here today we might bond over a little bit of light cricket banter, but you all know what happened, right? A couple of days ago in Perth, Jasprit Bumrah, 8 for 72. Oh my God, so I just have to say namaskar. And I think we move on, right? We move on. It's been 15 years. It's been 15 years, but I've lost too much money over the last couple of years coming here, actually. This is my third Big 5. So my role today, they haven't started the clock. That's excellent. I get an extra couple of seconds. My role today is I'm going to give you my view on this topic, but also I think I'm here to also play a little bit of the devil's advocate role. We've heard some great presentations today. If I sort of recap on some of the things that we've heard earlier, so Amit touching on, the topics of innovation, and what I also took out of that was speed. So innovation and speed being two very, very important things. Sash, the things that jumped out at me in Sash's presentation was not those areas where there was like high adoption, but there was this 1 percentage point where 2% of you were sort of looking at infrastructure in the context of looking at new ways and adoption and changing and moving forward. And then, of course, we had Uli talking about trust and data, and then Darian sort of following up with the network and the cyber topics as well. So what I'd like you to do is keep all of those in mind over the next 15 minutes or so, because each of those topics is relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. So I don't know about anyone else, but when I first saw the agenda a few weeks ago, maybe it was a couple of months ago, and I saw this topic of modernisation, and then I saw that I was going to be talking about it, I was like, what's modernisation? And I think all of us have been in technology for long enough. I'm close to 30 years now, and I think what we need to be careful about is thinking about this as just another theme, because we're very good in the tech industry at coming up with themes, and then it gets lost in the marketing wars that ensure about who's the best solution provider to help us with modernization. And so when I think about modernization, I actually think it's a very important topic. And in the context of the discussions we've had today, you can see that all these different things that together could be considered a part of this theme of modernization become very, very important. So, and these are all very interesting individual topics to be thinking about. If you look at them, containerization, that's something that's been around for a long time. This mid-range system transition to on-premise applications, moving to software as a service. You're looking at infrastructure as code. You can see we've touched on a lot of these topics today, and what I think is really interesting is that the answer sort of lies in some of these subjects that you see on the screen today, and that modernization is very much can be described as the new architecture for organizations. So if you look at the concept of serverless architectures, it's there in the name. If you look at infrastructure as code, that's very much an architectural approach. If you look at API first designs, we've spoken about integration. Our last presentation was about identity platforms, and that in itself is an architecture. So the modernization topic very much boils down to this concept of what is the new architecture. And so modernization today, at least, and I can be challenged on this, we've got a whole session tomorrow, but I think it very much represents this concept of a 21st century architecture, and that gives us something to think about in our own organizations. I think we need to take a reality check on that as well, though, because when we looked at the data that came out of the study with you, it seems that we're really still facing the same challenges that we've always faced. And so we still have this challenge of business and technology alignment. And so half of us feel comfortable sort of talking to business leaders, and half of us still feel a little bit adrift in getting some of these important conversations across around strategy. We're still having these challenges with finding skilled resources or how we can use these resources to help move the organization forward. And we're still focused on things like cost and efficiency, and also how we can use technology trends to bring down those things or increase those things inside our organization. The challenge, I think, of the conversations with the business executives, because let's be frank, I could be standing here 20 years ago and those same things would be on the screen, right? And so I think that's a problem. And this is where I get to play devil's advocate a little bit, because that last one about, 50%, we really want to understand trends in order to help the organization. Well, there's an argument to say we have seen more technology change in the last 20 years than we've ever seen in history. The acceleration of it is incredible. On the last slide, if you look at those 20 different architectures that exist that didn't exist in that time, then the problem is probably not, I'm trying to understand the trends to help improve the delivery of services for our customers or our organization or reduce cost, or is it really the problem? Can we say that's what it is? And I think this is one of those challenge questions that we need to walk away from these couple of days. And that is, if modernization is the strategic framework in which we need to think about things, and modernization comes with a portfolio of tools, then it's all there. So what do we need to do? Well, what we need to do is something different. So these two gentlemen on the screen, a couple of American guys, Lee Bolman and Terence Steele, so internationally renowned, both professors at respective universities in the US. They wrote the book on organizational leadership and organizational change and all those things. And their most famous quote in their most famous book is, "When we don't know what to do, we just do more of what we know." And in the context of what I've just said, with all the tools that are available to us and all the time that we've had and all the opportunity that we have, I think the real question is, do we really know what we need to do? And so that is where strategy becomes so important. And so I'm at my heart, my two passions in tech, strategy and business applications. And essentially today, that's all we've spoken about. And those two things can get you into the boardroom, and they get you all the way back to the data center. And all the stuff we've spoken about today in terms of DevOps and networks and security, you need these in all your business applications. And we need business applications to generate and manage the data and the analytics and all those things that we're talking about today. So essentially, strategy, business applications, a new architectural framework. And so we need to think about, what do we need to do differently? We're starting to do some things, right? But are we just doing them in the way that we've always done them? I actually think we are. This is me playing devil's advocate, right? Just based off the data and information that we've seen. So what I actually think is happening, if you look at the change in tech investments that you've all articulated, will be occurring over the next 2 years. And again, we've seen all these today, right? We're going to spend more on cybersecurity. We're going to spend more on AI. We're going to spend more on analytics and cloud. We're going to automate more stuff. We're going to fill in the digital concrete with more software and more tools and more this and more that, right? That's what we're going to do. I think the unspoken shift that we're seeing is we're not actually saying the important bit out loud because we've never done it before. It's all there for us, but we haven't done it. And the quiet bit is that this new architecture we're moving to, it's a platform as a service strategy. That's what it is. Whether or not the conversation this morning where we were talking about Atlassian, from all the way to an idea to code to releasing a project into production to a new digital services portal for our customers because we're the largest bank in the world, right? Or whatever it is, any of those conversations we've had, that all requires platform. The Okta conversation we've just had, so important, platform. The interesting thing about Okta as a platform is that the largest platform as a service software companies in the world use Okta within their platform. So it's a platform strategies, and that's a very different thought process. And it's sort of this inflection point that we need to say, actually, yes, this is the tipping point. And so we need to start doing things a little bit differently. One of the things that is going to impede us, not all of us, but those of us that aren't thinking platform strategy, is that we are going to continue to procure things in the same way we've always procured them. And this I thought was really interesting. Not the fact that, when we asked you and we sort of look around the market and it's very similar data, we're going to add another 6 to 10 solutions into our business this year. And you see it all the time because you get the requests. And Reep was talking about demand management, whether you're buying things off the shelf or whether you're building them. We had a session with Fujitsu a couple of weeks ago. The largest bank in Japan is custom building their CRM system from scratch because they're different and they just think they need to custom build one of all solutions that exist, right? And so this is the sort, and they know, and you talk to that bank in that country and that vendor, but that's part of their culture. Like that is part of the government's approach and big industry's approach to protecting the country and all the rest of it. But it does pose problems for competition. It does pose problems for scalability and all these sorts of things. So it's very challenging. But this, I think, is really interesting in terms of if you're adding 6 to 10 solutions into your portfolio, but you're doing it through traditional procurement frameworks, either because you're forced to or because you think, well, you know what, I just don't have the time to put out a massive tender that's going to incorporate capabilities for new portal software or systems and a new identity management system and all the rest of it. So you're going to do separate procurements and you're going to scope this that way and these requirements that way. And all that we're actually doing is we're moving further away from what is potentially the strategic goal that our boards are telling us they want. So, and it's because this is all we've done. This is all we've done over the past 30 years. So this whole concept of rethinking because we don't know helps us change the context of those questions. I think, we start to think about adding new things in year after year. It's very much sort of reflected in you see a lot of health issues in society now. And so it's that, it's that quick fix food. It's that, high carb, high fat, highly processed sort of diet that we're adding into the organization. And then we wonder why the organization is slowing down. The other thing with the procurement is obviously that these solutions are coming into the organization. Very often we see that they're actually siloed to different divisions within an organization, regardless of whether you're a manufacturing firm or a bank or a large agricultural industry or you're a government department. These things are siloed, and that's the antithesis of all those modernization toolkit capabilities that we saw on the same slide, because otherwise you have to do all those things for all those solutions you're bringing in. And this is another sort of example of when we talk about what those top complexity challenges are. Again, we could be stepping back in time. Now, I was here, not here, I think it was in Bangalore. The first one of these we did, it was specifically for the CISOs. It was like 130 CISOs in the room, and all we talked about was cybersecurity for 2 days. And we're still talking about it in the same way. I want to challenge you on this a little bit as well. I know it's important, but thinking about where it fits in is also important. Increased cost, we've just heard about that. And if you think about these things that we bring in with a view to solving our problems, but this incremental view of technology growth inside organizations is very problematic, and the knowledge and the learning gap, that's a perfect example where perhaps we're saying we've always had skills problems because technology is always advanced faster than we can either recruit or train or educate because it's always the next thing, right? If you think about it, I think there's two things that help us address that once and for all. One is when you're choosing a platform strategy, you are narrowing the requirements for what you're training in because those are the skills that you need. The bonus to that is that more and more graduates are coming into the workplace ready trained in these platform capabilities because of the platforms themselves are educational hubs. You name any of the world's largest platforms, they have some of the best learning management platforms that are freely available. And so the skills thing, should not be an issue at all. The second point about the skills, let's stop talking about the skills. I think part of the challenge is the world has shifted so much. Part of solving the skills problem is actually taking the time to think about whether the structure of our organizations and our technology departments and our relationships with our partners is correct. Because we're just trying to bring new skills into the same departments and the same structures, and they've changed very, very little over the last 30 years as well. So we're sort of seeing this illusion of platform as a service, and we're sort of talking about it, but the biggest problem is that we're trying to do platform as a service using 20th century technology management thinking. It's a 21st century architectural approach. And so we need to start thinking about it in those terms and not in those terms. And that's not to say a couple of months ago before, when we were putting out some things on LinkedIn about this event, I did a little video and it was just see if you can think about who some of your greatest mentors were, right? Because it's not to say that what we've built today is wrong. In fact, some of the systems that have been built today are the most robust that have ever existed. They've been stable for decades. They've been secure for decades. And it's really now that the world is changing, all we're saying is we're actually building new foundations. With all the respect to the people that have come before us, we can't continue to use the same management approaches and the same thinking approaches and the same procurement approaches and the same architectural approaches that built the last century. We have to think about these new approaches. So if we think about then how this starts to impact other parts of the ecosystem like managed services is still really important. But it will change the way those managed service providers and system integrators are going to operate. And again, the presentation from Enreap this morning was a perfect example where that is a service provider that can offer end-to-end workflows or flow of work all the way from the code to the delivery of the project and managing that. And that's one of the key changes that we'll see in the managed service provider and the system integrator space, because it'll be the ability for them to have workflows under management. And Uli touched on this. This is not a new model. Like the Rolls-Royce example that he gave, that's the perfect example of what workflows under management will look like. And the only way to provide workflows under management is with a platform strategy. It's too difficult to do with old technology. And so when you think about the concept of the difference between, well, what is the difference between like a typical legacy system like ERP, for example, and a platform system? Well, an ERP, at the end of the day, is just a data store. We wanted it to be more. We wanted it to be a process engine and do all these sorts of things, but it very much got stuck. It didn't deal with all these other things like security and integration and business process management. And it didn't deliver us the portals we need and have inbuilt knowledge bases and all these sorts of things. So it was essentially just a data store, which is important. Whereas a platform as a service solution is more like a flow of work store. And it's the platform that allows things to flow across the organization and solving a lot of our cross-functional problems that have always existed because of the way we've acquired point solutions. And so to summarize the modernisation agenda, I would say we're all being very cautious. We can say, yeah, we're ambitious, but I don't think we're any more ambitious than we've ever been. But I think we're as cautious as we've ever been. And things are just getting more complex. It's no easier today to try to explain to a CEO or a board or whoever our sponsor is for budgets and business cases and all the rest of it, what any of this stuff means, if we're being realistic. It's not any easier. It's not going to get any easier. So the question becomes again, if we don't know what to do and we do more of what we know, that's really driving a lot of this caution in the way that we're doing. It's not helping us move towards these solutions. It's not improving our relationship with the business. And so what do we do? So I think before I finish, hang on a second. So this is me playing devil's advocate. I asked myself a couple of months ago when I was trying to think about all this and just come up with like the answer. Right? What's been the greatest achievement in enterprise technology in the last 30 years? Rhetorical question. You can think about it and you can try to come up with something. I couldn't come up with one. Okay, it stumped me for weeks. I was like, I'm going to answer this question. What is the greatest thing? It's not AI. It's not AI. And it's not cloud. Everything that we've seen so far is just a transition state to get us to here. And I went, that's part of the answer. I think the greatest thing we've achieved in technology in the last 30 years, it's the potential to be great. That's what it is. And that's what the Modernisation toolkit is. Look at all the amazing building blocks we now have. We can create anything. The technology is not an impediment. What I think is an impediment is the creativity, which is really sad for the IT industry because as a profession, IT professionals have always been some of the most creative people on the planet. There's a high percentage of IT professionals who play musical instruments. There's some of you probably write poetry. I do every now and then. You just need a creative outlet. And code is, and then we get distracted by these sort of senior executive jobs and we get older and we lose a little bit of our youthful exuberance and creativity. But at the end of the day, everything that has led us to today has been creativity. Technology is just the vessel, right? The greatest thing we've created is that potential. And so that's my challenge to you to think about over the next couple of days. And this guy, Dr. Jason Fox, he's one of the most creative, strategic thinkers, certainly in Australia, if not the region. And I think this quote here from him is bang on. In order to get to this place that we come to these conferences and talk about and get excited about, we need to go to a place that is a little uncertain and a little uncomfortable because all the tools are there, but we can't create the change for you. That has to come from the individuals. so that you then become the mentors to the next generation and the creators of change. And this transition is going to take the next 20 years, right? But by 2040, we'll look back and people will think about the changes that you made to the procurement systems, to the technologies, but they won't think about the technology. They will think about you as, this is why that person was a mentor, because they knew that we had to break a mold to get there. And so reflecting on the data and the earlier parts of the presentation, playing devil's advocate, so they all get to be the nice people, I get to be the less nice person. I think there's an inadequate pace of change. I think there's an over-reliance on the way we've always done things. And I think there's a lack of real strategic vision and creativity to help us get there. There's no impediments other than those three things. And so the slow and cautious approach that has got us to here, it's not going to get us to where we want to go. And I think we're seeing that in different parts of the world today. When you look at what companies are achieving and you look at what new business models are achieving, they don't have access to any more technology than we've got. And some of them have done it on a shoestring. Like that's not what it is. So the incremental approach to modernization will set you backwards. It'll put you at a competitive disadvantage. It won't help with your talent retention problems. It won't build your relationships with the business executives. And it won't change this just eternal problem of IT as a cost center. When these organizations that we work in, if you look at every other asset in the business, the buildings we work in, the cars we drive, if we're in government, the parks we manage, whatever it is, they're all treated as strategic assets. We run them, we upgrade them, we renew them, we build new ones, we love them. We're not thinking about AI as a strategic asset. We're not thinking about cloud, capabilities as a strategic asset. And so starting to build that into the strategy, the platform strategy, is a key to rethinking how we approach the next 20 years. So I look forward catching up with all of you tonight. Probably, I know I've got a round table and then the panel tomorrow, but I just encourage you, get creative, be young again, write poetry, sing songs. We'll see what happens. Great. Thank you very much.